We could get into our motherfucking light bodies and how we started, and that be the platonic shapes, and how we start to create different alignments and points within these things, so they become compound, like compound numbers, and therefore we're starting to understand dimensional shifts, layering, lowering frequency vibrations, and being able to live out one of these shapes and forms as an organ or some shit like that. So keep that in mind. So you might want to say I'm pseudo, right? But if you want to think about things like a what? If I'm not mistaken, like a octagon, right? So for the most part, that would be like a eight pointed star, right? So you'd be like, okay, how is he correlating to this? But for the most part, you want to know you a walking star, you a walking 5-pointed star. So if you was to go into a sea and see an octopus, that's a walking 8-pointed star. So what do an octopus got? 8 tentacles. You see what I'm saying? So whatever light ray and frequency vibration that we've been tracking over time, oral tradition, real astrology, we're able to understand the sound or the vowel that turned into light that we vibrated on, that it moves slow enough to turn into an actual organ or a physical vehicle that we can utilize as spirits to experience the dimension that we have all created, because teamwork makes the dream work. So when you think about octopuses, they have eight dimensional energy. So they got like black hole energy. They got like the knowledge that they got is they got many brains. So they can have brains in areas where we're not capable to have brains at. So you need to know each organ is a brain. The heart, the liver, all that. Octopuses got them in areas that as a human you haven't developed yet. You see what I'm saying? So once we talk about reverse and backwards and wisdom and shit like that, things get tricky once we start to talk about sea creatures and land creatures. And land creatures a lot of times represent the spirits that got lost into the Demi-urge. That's another motherfucking video. Thank you so much for the donation, King of Higher Self. Yeah, so you always speak that higher self. Yeah, goddamn it, because look, I'm tired of the grind. I'm tired of down here. You better believe it. So my mind don't even be down here on a 24/7 basis. So I be having to find ways just to explain myself. And that became fun over the time. But look, let's get into it. We ain't gonna waste no more monkey ass time. Now look, coming from the zero circumference, that's your spirit, your space, right? So that's your so the best way I can explain your spirit down here, you know what you want in and out of your space. You know what I'm saying? Whether you rubbing shoulders with someone or not, if they make you feel free or not free, feel is one of the shapes and forms that you utilize as a vehicle, like a merkaba. A shapeless form is non-flammable gas. So that's not even you. But you're able to utilize this to touch another spirit that's doing the same thing as you. And if you could touch it a little bit and feel that it's not going in the direction of your body of water, of your will chakras, spiritually, you can redirect your spaceship. So keep that in mind also. But here's how we create a spaceship. Thank you so much for the donation, Nicola Sex. Now, as a spirit, right? You're zero. Now, you have to become aware. Now, once you become aware, right, you become aware of your parameter. So by default, you create a point, right? You create a point, a dot, a point of reference of yourself. So now you're in the center, you're understanding the center of your space. Now you're starting to spread out, expand and contract, concede and recede, right? So for the most part, here's the thing, right? Now, once you become aware, you become an individual space by default. You become aware of your parameter, that develops into consciousness. So you develop the first substance of consciousness, but you're really not, you didn't create no substance yet. You're just being aware of your parameter. So for the most part, this is your spirit creating a point of itself. So this is one. This is when your zero become a one, aka an individual space, an individual spirit, which is a soul, a solo space. You have outlined your parameter as a spirit, awareness, a halo that separates yourself from other spaces. There's always space within space. So for the most part, now you became aware, and now you have a point, and that's one. Now you relate that to what you just did. So it's kind of like you're relating to yourself, but you're also relating outside of yourself, and that's like interchangeable. So it's kind of like you getting into that mode of externalizing yourself. You know what I'm saying? Left, up, forward. And then that goes in. Then you internalize yourself. Right, down, back. But before we get into that, like I said, now as a spirit, right? Once you start to have that point and then you relate it as a zero, spirit, you become aware, a point, related, 2 points. But that's one line of frequency. And that creates number 2. You know what I'm saying? So you are able to relate yourself to yourself or relate to other spirits that's doing the same thing within your circumference, within your parameter. God is a parameter. That's a whole nother video. Like I said, all possibilities. But for the most part, you're able to relate that. And now that you're able to relate to yourself or others, right, by default, that's you creating a 120, 120, 120 from your point. Your point, you related that. It's a 90-degree angle, but for the most part, then by default, that created a circumference, and now that becomes your triangle. So boom, now you got a 120. So I'm saying? So that's a triangle, right? So now you got a light body. You got an image. You have a world that you have separated yourself onto. Now, the spirit that get lost into separation is your Abrahamic God. That's another video. But that get lost into their triangle. You know what I'm saying? The inverted and the outverted. That's another video. This will be Lucifer. This will be God. So it's the same individual in one body arguing with themselves. You know what I'm saying? Because of the urges that they have got lost in. So everything, all possibilities, that spirit is created through heme. Heme is another word for light. Lucifer, right? The fleshly fluid. But at this time, this before we became so dense, that is this daughters of men kind of fleshly fluid. We looked at the sons of God, like our sons of God's like fleshly fluid. Our ideas, our imaginations, our thoughts, our masculine energy we push off to externalize ourselves as spirits, to let us make man in our image. We make the man, the thought, the externalization in the image of the spirit. We get lost into that triangle of ourselves. And we bind ourselves up in our own alignment. And if our triangle ain't high enough and we don't receive enough praise, it becomes an inverted triangle. And we place that energy onto other spirits that's doing the same thing in order to drink them so we can receive a upright triangle again. And that's like a long lost energy of trial and tribulation. But that's what this spirit, Abrahamic spirit, got lost in before we created all the constellations and shapes and forms and shit like that. But before we get too lost into that, like I said, right? Now, once we create that triangle represents fire. So here's how the Abrahamic God also got you lost into the light, because now the fire is the spirit. The fire is the face. I mean, the spirit is the face. The spirit is the fire. The spirit is the image. So now your spirit is something. You know what I'm saying? Where your spirit is always none of these things. That's why we're learning from the spirit all the mistakes. When we detach ourselves from desires, fires, passions, that's when we understand we're true spirits. But understanding this spirit testimony and the footprints it laid in the sand, that lets you know where things will lead to when we get lost. Revelations, floods, spiritually drowning, aka what I just used 2,000 years later, in my words, being washed up under the current. Thank you so much for the donation, Tyler Reed. Real shit.